I can't remember my first time in a commercial airplane, but I remember the first time I was in a GA airplane. I was 14. I was, I guess, a freshman in high school, and my dad had arranged for me to go up with just a buddy of his, and I sat right seat, and he let me fly for a little bit, and I was just so fascinated because it's like, this is something I've always wanted to do, and now I'm actually doing it, and I was very happy, and a month later I started flight training. I've always wanted to fly. It's been something I've always wanted to do ever since I can remember. So it's just been something that I have had such a strong passion for. And now that I'm here, I can pursue it to the fullest capability that I can. Yeah, I flew all through high school. I passed my private check ride right after I graduated high school, before I came here to Riddle.
So that was 17 or so?
Yeah, I was 18 when I passed my check ride. It was a little difficult trying to fit flight training in with being a full-time student while doing other activities. So it took a while, and with some other, ups and downs. But we were able to get it done, and it was probably one of the best days when I passed that check ride.
So let's see. We started down here in August or September. When did you get your private? Sometime during the summer, just prior to that?
Yeah, I got it at the end of July.
End of July.
26th of July.
Really?
To be specific.
You still remember that?
Yes, I do.
If you still remember that, do you still remember the first solo?
Yes, I do. It was July 1st of the year before.
The year
2012.
Before. And what was that like?
Well, the whole day itself was crazy because we had had such a bad storm. There was no power, there was no water, there was nothing. But I was like, I'm going to solo this airplane and nothing's going to stop me. So I remember I was really nervous the car ride over. I flew with my instructor just one lap around. She hopped out of the airplane and said, have fun. And the next thing I knew, I was, full throttle down the runway on my way. I was on upwind. I was like, this is different. But I had my third landing was probably, surprisingly, one of the best landings that I can ever remember. And being almost a commercial pilot now, that's, just that one landing still stands out to me.
Really?
I just remember hearing the main squeak, and just kind of rolling down, seeing my parents wave off to the side. Yeah, it was a great day too.
It's really satisfying, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Was there anybody in your family or anybody close by that had their own airplane, or was this all at a flight school?
This is all at a flight school. I trained out of Warrenton-Fauquier Airport in Warrenton, Virginia.
Warrenton?
Yep, and it's just a little uncontrolled field with one runway. I flew with Aviation Adventures, which is a well-recognized flight school out of the Northern Virginia area. We have lots of other locations besides Warrenton.
Okay.
I trained in a 172 SP model, but you can train in Diamond Katanas, Diamond Stars. You can train in 162s. So there's quite the fleet that Aviation Adventures has, but I wanted to stick with my classic Skyhawk, so. Oh, the FBO.
The FBO.
That airport is, I don't want to use the cliche term airport bums, but it's kind of accurate in this case because over the summer there's always a handful of people just kind of sitting outside, right outside the FBO, just watching everybody go by. Like, hey, how was your flight? Oh, hey, do you want to come hop in mine? Let's go for a flight. Or, it's like, I'm getting ready to go fly. How are the winds? What's the weather like? So there are always people around. And, it's great because those people share the same passion that you do.
Sure.
So I would definitely stop by the FBO. If not, just walk into somebody's open hangar that's working on the airplane and just say, hey. So.
That always seems to work.
Yeah.
An open hangar is like, come on in, right?
Basically. Well, once I got started, I started with one flight instructor, and he was the wife of one of my teachers in middle school. And we flew for about a year together, intermittently whenever I could get out to the airport. But then he died in a midair collision and just south of the airport. So there's a full the Canadian Transportation Safety Board investigated it.
Canadian.
Yeah, so he was flying, my instructor was flying with an NTSB official on the board. The FAA and the NTSB were both involved in this investigation,
Wow.
so the Canadians came in so that there was no bias towards anybody. So it's just fair and an overall well-rounded, proper investigation. It was quite the shock the next day because word didn't really reach us until the following day, and it's kind of creepy to think about because I was the last person to fly with him before he went and flew on that flight. So it's a little eerie to think about that I was almost essentially the last person to see him alive. We are in a dangerous field, and we go up knowing that that could happen, but one thing that I know happened is that he died doing something he loved. My whole, basically my career plan is kind of revolved around the fact that how can I prevent that from happening to anybody else having to go through that. So I push myself in my own flight training to be a better pilot, to be a safer pilot, more importantly. So, I think, every time there's a crash, I always think about, what struggle I went through, let alone the people that are related to them. So crashes are hard, but there's things that you walk away from, and I walked away from it learning that I need to be learning safety and learning what we need to do from a safety standpoint. It was from the start, I was like, I'm going to Embry Riddle. That was it. I applied to this school in UND, and it was funny enough, this just appealed to me so much more. I'm a human factors major, and Embry Riddle has a fantastic human factors program, and so I came here and I have loved every minute of it. And I know everybody says that eventually you're going to want to leave, but right now I don't. So I could stay here for a while and I'd be perfectly happy. I have a lot of ideas in mind, but the one that I'm focusing on right now is I want to be an air safety investigator for either the NTSB or an aircraft company of sorts like Dassault or Boeing or Cessna even. But also be a part-time flight instructor at a local flight school, wherever that air safety investigation job might take me. So I'm probably going to stay here and flight instruct while I'm getting my master's degree as well before I move on into the air safety investigation field.
Sure.
But that's what I'm thinking about right now, and it seems to be working out pretty well. What I want to focus on is human performance and human factors in air safety investigation, so having my master's degree will definitely help me reach that point.
Okay.
For human factors, you can look at it in a gazillion different ways. You can look at it, why did the pilot make that decision? Also, how does the aircraft and the human-machine interface, how did that influence the accident? Or how did the person-to-person ATC to the pilot relationship work in this accident? You basically, from the human factor standpoint, really focus on the person. You really focus on what made them do what they did, or maybe there wasn't anything human factors related and it was just, well, you don't know, mechanical, whatever it might be, or maybe the mechanical was somehow human factors related. It's hard to tell, but I just think it's fascinating to see, going back and seeing, well, they did this for this specific reason. How can we make sure that that doesn't happen again? I find the concept of mission mindset very interesting. I studied a case that a Eurocopter helicopter crashed in Alaska because it was a medevac flight, and he was trying to get the patient back, but the problem was he was flying in IMC conditions. He was not IFR current. He was flying in not IFR certified aircraft, and he was flying with an observer that had no purpose, basically. So he just, based upon what I can understand from the accident, he justified flying into that so he'd get the patient back, but in reality, he made the situation worse. Maybe had he stayed and waited for the weather to improve and then left, maybe everybody could have been saved. But I just find mission mindset is very interesting because, you know, when you get people into that mindset that, you know, they can't, that they have to do something, how do you break that mindset, or how do you prevent that mindset? You know, because that's, I mean, that's dedication right there, or fear, and it's very interesting because it's so misunderstood. And, you know, from a human factors standpoint, the whole idea of, you know, see and avoid, or, you know, pilot error. Well, what does pilot error really mean? You know, you could say pilot error about everything, but, you know, how do you go and you get really nitpicky about it? And maybe if you find, you know, the little things within that pilot error, then we wouldn't have to have as much pilot error anymore. So there are different classification systems that are used. Of course, nothing is absolutely perfect, but there are two that are used within the human factors accident investigation world. It's called the first one is HFACS. It's Human Factors Analysis and Classification System, and basically, a human factors analyst looks at the facts provided to them by the investigators and pulls out information about the pilot, the acts of the accident, whether it was like an error or a regulation violation. They take a look at the direct supervisor of the person involved. They look at the overall organization as well. Because just because a pilot made a mistake doesn't mean that that's where the problem started. The problem could have started all the way back to, you know, the head of the company, the head of the organization, the climate of the organization, and just by changing that itself could drastically affect how pilots fly from that point on.
Sure, sure.
Another one is called the Human Factors Information Matrix, which is brand new. I'm not as familiar with that as I am HFACS. I've been working with HFACS recently in one of my system safety human factors classes. But that's also another way to look at it. But instead of the HFACS diagram version, you have a matrix for roughly the same thing. It is newer, not as well understood from what I understand as HFACS. However, people still worldwide use HFACS. It is the most accepted human factors analysis model that I can think of.
And so after an accident occurs, people use this means of trying to determine what occurred?
We would like to think that everybody uses it. Oh. Not everybody uses it. And Dr. Scott Chappell, who is the Human Factors Department chair, he's the one that developed HFACS. And part of his job is to go around the world spreading it to companies and to organizations and to agencies, telling them you should use this, you should get trained in this, you should apply this to your investigative techniques, because it digs deeper into the error or the violation of the actual accident itself. There are two ways you can look at this. In the end, it really just kind of comes down to what your financial situation is at the time. I would say if you're a high school student and you want to fly, go fly. You know, start as early as you want to, because you can get so much experience in high school. You know, having flown through most of high school is enjoyable. You know, it almost, in a sense, you have to think differently from other people if you other people that you go to school with, because of what you do, because what you do is incredibly serious. And high school, while they tell you is, you know, very serious, is nothing like the real world. So I think starting in high school puts you straight into the real world of aviation just by starting to learn to fly. At that point, I would suggest, or if that doesn't work, you know, you can start in college. I have plenty of friends, even on the flight team too, that started here at Riddle, and they're very professional pilot. They're well-rounded. They know their material. So I would definitely say that if you can't start, there's nothing wrong with starting in college at all. In fact, you know, for some people, it just makes more sense, and that's okay. But in the end, I think that if you really are certain that you want to be a professional pilot, to go ahead and pursue it. go to a school like Riddle or UND or Western Michigan, Purdue. There are plenty of schools out there that allow you to fly. There are programs that are being developed with other non-aviation-oriented universities with local flight schools so that you can still fly at that university, but you're flying at a local flight school instead. Because we're very lucky here to be literally living on an airport, where others aren't as lucky as we are, but there's definitely the opportunity for those out there to find whatever they need to do. Or, if the aviation school university isn't what you really want to do, just pursue your flight training. If you love aviation, go for it. I don't think most pilots are just doing aviation just because. They're doing it because they love it. And if you have that dream to fly that 7-4, go and work at it and you will fly that 7-4. So it is totally achievable. So I did my flight training at a Part 61 school, and this is a Part 141 school. So they have different environments completely. When I learned to fly, it was, hey, what do you want to do today? There was no line item list. There was obviously the set curriculum based upon the PTS, but nothing, like day by day by day. So it was, let's go work on this. Let's go do this. And you could, I had 8-hour days just going out and doing flight after flight after flight, and then, sitting down and having oral time and talking about it. It was, compared to Riddle, it was a completely different environment. I mean, this airport has 3 runways. It's a controlled airport, Class Charlie airspace. I flew at a very little airport. In terms of dealing with traffic, it's completely different. But I liked flying at uncontrolled because I know that I can handle, whatever, well, maybe not whatever, but, the majority of what comes at me at an uncontrolled field. People do whatever they want in an uncontrolled field, so I feel good about that. There was only a couple flight instructors there. We don't, back at my home airport, we didn't have the extensive check ride process that Riddle has. You kind of have like a pre-check ride and then pre-check ride, a check ride, a pre-check ride. You have a lot. For me, back at home, it was just very much, what do you want to do today? What do you feel like flying? Which for some people is nice. However, some people really like the way that it is at Riddle. I'm kind of torn between the two. I really like the Part 61 way of, let's just kind of go out and fly and do PTS work and then come back and then we'll, keep pushing forward. And then I also like the curriculum-based work that's done here at Riddle.
First of all, how did you get involved with ARC? What prompted you to decide that would be a good move?
So last year I saw the application poster that was up all over the COA and the flight department. And at the time I was just a private pilot without an instrument reading. I hadn't even started my instrument flight training yet. And I thought, I'm just not qualified. They're not going to take somebody that has, barely has over 100 hours. Doesn't really have a whole lot of experience. So I thought, I'll just try it next year. Over the summer, while the team was out there flying their race last year, I was following them on Facebook. I saw all their pictures, and I just got so excited. I was like, okay, I have to do this. I absolutely have to do it. So as soon as the applications went up this year, I was like, I don't care how many hours I have, what ratings, what certificates, no, I'm going to go for it. So it was like, I don't know, maybe like the 4th day the application was open, I had it in. I was like, I'm going to do this, and I was excited, I was nervous, and just so thrilled that I'm able to get that opportunity because, even if I hadn't made it, just the fact that I applied for it already meant so much to me. So, which sounds kind of silly, but my parents, they were so encouraging. They pushed me, said, hey, did you get your application in? Hey, have you filled it out yet? Hey, make sure you do. They are very supportive and very encouraging for that as well.
And so you got chosen to be on it and be Nancy's co-pilot.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Riddle Racer Gold.
Yes, you're the gold team.
Yeah,
right?
we're the gold team. Just kind of amazed, you know. It's like that, just like not even the race itself, just the fact that she got to fly in a Skyhawk to California from literally the other side of the country. Like that in its own has got to have been an amazing trip, you know. And then to be in this race with, you know, 54 or 55 other teams of experienced women pilots across the country, just like Amelia Earhart did in 1929. You know, it's just, you know, just to leave a legacy like that, to continue the race that Amelia Earhart started on its own, just is so incredible, you know. All these years later, and it's us, you know, it's me flying this race. And, you know, just hearing her stories, you know, about flying in the mountains and just seeing things she had never seen before.
The alpacas.
Oh, yeah. And like living out of a backpack for 2 weeks, you know. So we've heard all the stories, but the race is different this year. It's not from California. It's starting from actually just 60 nautical miles south of where I learned to fly. I've actually landed at that airport a million times, but it's very close to home, different environment, but it's going to be fun, you know, just to, you know, flying all over the East Coast, flying in bits and parts of the Midwest, and going up to Kalamazoo and making our way back to Fairhope. I'm very excited for it. Now we have a great support system from her. You know, she's a great asset to have, and the people that are working with us over the summer, you know, we are very thankful for them and the hard work and dedication that they're putting into what they do to help us.
And who is that then?
There is a weather class, from what I understand, a weather support team that comes together and works with us as well as other teams that need weather support. I participate in a handful. I participate in aircraft recognition.
Oh, are you one of those?
I am.
Oh, Emmy, tell me how you do this.
What do you mean, like how I do it?
Here's what I know about this. There are a total of 180 points possible.
Yes.
They generally give you generally get 3 points for every picture.
It's 3 points for every question.
Okay, 3 points for every question. And a question is called a picture.
It's a picture.
Of an aircraft.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, you do. When I started REC, this is my second year on the team, and when I started REC, I will be honest, I was awful. I was not near the best, not near the top. And you know, the way it used to be is that, you know, if REC usually just comes to people. It's one of those things that people just get. And eventually it has come to me in a lot stronger way. But for me at first, it was all bookwork. It was all studying. It was all making tests. It was making presentations. It was taking my own time to do this and to get better at it and to become a competitive wrecker, as we call ourselves.
Wreckers?
Mm-hmm, we call ourselves wreckers. So everybody has their own way of preparing themselves for REC. You know, even within our own team, everybody does it differently. It's all about how you learn best. Okay. So for me, the way I learn best is to take tests and to review tests as presentations. Because when you take a test, you get different angles that you probably have never seen before. But from that angle, you have to be able to determine what type of aircraft that was. And for a lot of people, it's very difficult. But you know, people get discouraged by it, especially during tryouts. And, you know, I tell them, you know, look at me. You know, I was in the exact same situation you were in. I was very frustrated. You know, I didn't think I was going to be good at it. But, you know, if you really want it, you can do it. And I'm a big advocate of that, right, for REC, you know, because not a lot of people do it. And also not a lot of girls do it. We should get more girls into it. Because it's just so different from everything else. 15 seconds for multiple choice, 30 seconds for write-in, and 3 seconds to look at a picture.
Wait a second here. 15 seconds to guess.
The multiple choice.
The multiple choice.
30 seconds for the write-in.
30 for the write-in.
And you get to see the image for 3 seconds.
Okay, Emmy, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
I think this is a wrap.
Okay.